More pre-quiz questions. These are looking like they're easy, but they're not. They have to do with subtraction, they have to do with decimals, and they're tricky. So let's look at them. The first one up here is 73 minus 4.2. For this, basically, you need to remember your basic subtraction. This is actually, if you line it up, 73.0 minus 4.2. If you line it up properly, half the battle's won. This ends up being, if you borrow 1 from the 3, you get 10 minus 2, which is 8. That ends up being 2 minus 4. You can't do it. You borrow 1 from the 7, you get 12 minus 4, which is 18. 8. And then you have 6 left over. 68.8 is your answer. Does it make sense? Well, 73 is a pretty big number, and you're only taking away 4.2. So 68.8 seems to make sense. That one was pretty straightforward. This one, I don't know. Depends. If you know your rules for subtraction, then this one might help. One thing that always helps with these is drawing a number line. Just because then you get an idea of where you're at. Number lines are easy to draw. It takes 2 seconds. Where is our negative 73 going to be? If this is going to be a 0 right there, where on the number line, Jonathan?
To the left.
Yeah, right over, quite a ways over, right? Let's say we're right over there, negative 73. So now we're going to go which way back? Because this is subtraction. So what do we do with subtraction, Amanda? What's the rule of subtraction?
You go to the left.
That's not exactly the answer. You might be right, but I want you to convert this because it's a subtraction
Then
problem.
you go to the,
Yeah, but don't tell me which direction. Just tell me what we do to convert that to from subtraction.
change it to an addition.
That's right. Good. Negative 73 plus negative 4.2. And now what do we do? Now I think you can answer this properly, right? Because you're adding 2 negatives. And yes, you're right. You were right. Going to the left. And I'm not saying you were wrong. I just want to make sure we do it in order. So how far do we go? We go another 4.2. And where do we end up? Anybody know?
77.2. Negative 77.2.
Right. Adding negative 4.2. And you get negative 77.2. Okay? Everybody clear? Does anybody have any questions? You add 2 negatives, you're going to go farther left on the number line, and it's going to be more negative, so to speak. 73 minus negative 4.2. Sophia, what are we going to do this one? What's our first step? No? Well, we subtract, but basically, what's our first step when we subtract? Pardon me? No. First of all, what's the rule of subtraction that we learned? How far out, Tamara?
You have to add them.
Add the opposite, right? So 73 plus 4.2. Now the whole thing is a lot easier, right? Now what do we get, Sophia?
Now you're supposed to add them together.
Yeah. And you get what?
77.2.
Good. Everybody clear on that? Different questions. I mean, they're very similar, but they're different. And you have to be a little bit careful that you don't get messed up by the negatives. And the real key is that you remember this is subtraction. That means you add the opposite. That's really the key. These are more questions that you're going to get on the test. Please study them. I'm breaking this down, the distribution principle, to make sure that you understand the very basics. Up here, number 1, 4 times x minus 5. So our first step is we use the distributive principle. We go 4 times x and 4 times negative 5. If I write that in full, it's going to be 4 times x minus 4 times 5. See that? And our answer is 4x minus 20. Okay? Now this one here, it starts to get a little funky when we have negatives, right? Negative 3. But the same principles go on. Okay? We just basically swing that onto there and swing that onto there. So Jonathan, what's negative 3 times negative x? When we have a negative times a negative, what do we get? Positive 3x. And negative 3 times negative 5. If you want, I'll write it out in full. It'd be negative 3 times negative x. All I'm doing is separating. Okay? So now what is our answer? Negative 3 times negative x is 3x. Kia? What about negative 3 times negative 5?
Negative is going to be a positive 15.
Good. So these ones, you really have to master these. You can't be doubting, worrying, or not sure of any of these. You have to be very, very sure of these. That's why I'm putting them on again, okay? Number 3. Again, what's the difference between this one and these ones? Who can see the difference in those ones? Yes, Charlie?
It's 5 minus x plus 3, and the other one is negative 3.
Yeah, exactly. There was nothing up here to get confused about. But do we really worry about that 5?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Oh.
Not yet. Kia?
The negative right there is an invisible one.
Right. Okay. See? Okay, now we swing that. Now what happens? You tell me. Desiree?
You distribute the negative one.
Right.
So you get 5
Ramit?
minus x
Okay.
minus 3.
You see that, Ramit? You don't worry about the 5. That's what I meant by that, Charlie. You're not really worried about it at first because you're just dealing with this. And so some people get confused when they try to distribute the 5, and you don't do that. You wait and you keep it out there, and then you swing that negative 1 onto x and negative 1 onto 3, and then you're all set. Then now we go ahead and collect like terms. Which terms can we add together or subtract together? 5 and 3. So I want to write it like this: 5 minus 3 minus x. And what's 5 minus 3? 2. And we end up with 2 minus x, which can be written, or I can put or, negative x plus 2. Okay? In general, it's better to write it with the degree, highest degree on the left. In other words, with the highest exponent on the left, or the variables on the left, and then the numbers, coefficients. Okay? Any questions on these ones? These are basic. They're not as hard as the ones you did on the quiz, but I want to make sure you've seen the very basic principles and are very solid with those. Those of you who are having trouble with that, go over these questions on YouTube and go over them again and again until you really feel solid. Those of you who are having trouble, quiet please, quiet.